Good morning. Welcome to 30 Days of Transformation. Today I want to talk about guilt, resentment, compassion, and gratitude. So the other day I heard somebody say, or maybe I read it, I don't remember, if you're ever trying to decide between guilt and resentment, you should always go for the guilt. And I was like, that's really interesting. And so I talked to my husband about it. You know, he's a therapist. And I said, what do you think about this idea of like guilt and resentment? You should go for the guilt. And he was like, yeah, because if you go for the resentment, you have no control over it. You know, you have no control over the situation. Whereas with guilt, you can be like, I could do something about that. So I thought that was really interesting. I remember a long time ago, I was in grad school and one of my teachers was talking about, I think we were discussing third world or developing country challenges and how that, you know, there's such a disparity of wealth. And she said, the opposite of guilt, she said, you can feel guilty about it, but the opposite of guilt is responsibility. And so that I was reminded of that. The opposite of guilt is responsibility. And that if you have a choice between guilt and resentment, go for the guilt, because then it'll lead you to, what can I do? You know, how can I make that change? And this is true, certainly personally, and it's also true in terms of our relationships and it's true in terms of our culture as well. I think resentment, we have to be really careful of resentment. It's a very toxic kind of emotion, and it takes us out of our own capacity to make changes. So it eliminates what's called the locus of control, or it yanks that out of us. So I think it's tricky. I think we live in a culture where we're taught that resentment is the natural kind of fallout or the natural expression or emotion from living in a place where we're not getting what everybody else is getting. You know, we live in this culture that's like, you should be having it all. You know, this is a have it all culture. You should have everything. You should have that life. And then people end up putting too much on their credit cards, getting themselves into debt, feeling resentful because they're in debt. You see where it's going. And I think resentment can be a useful motivating force when you recognize it. Right, there it is. I recognize it. Now I'm going to do something about it, which leads me to the next bullet points that I wanted to talk about. Well, actually, leads me to the last bullet point. So let me talk about the second one first. So what Patanjali says, I think this is relevant in terms of resentment, because resentment can lead us to a place of just being pissed and being angry. Yesterday I was driving across the Smoky Park Bridge, and those of you who've been to or live in Asheville know we've got this big bridge that divides downtown Asheville from West Asheville, and it's a very dangerous, like a death trap. There's accidents there all the time. So I'm driving up the bridge and I accidentally cut a guy off, which I'm usually really careful, but you know, it happened. And so I looked at him and I was like, sorry. And he gave me like the fire eyes, and then he followed me. You know, he literally chased me down. He got off the exit I was getting off at. And as I'm getting off the exit, I'm like, he's not following me. That's just fine. I'm fine. Then I turned to go down the road and he's right on my tail. And then I was like, maybe I should try and lose this guy. So I like tried to turn left to lose him. Or I put my signal on. I was going to turn left. And then he sped around and got in front of me. So to prevent me from turning, or somehow, I don't know exactly what was going on. And then I tried to get in front of him again, and he tried. It was bad. It was very dangerous. And finally, I lost him. I thought I lost him. And I went around one way to get to where I was going. But he kind of knew where I was going somehow, in a creepy way. And he went the other way. And he tracked down my car, found my car. He left a note on my windshield saying what a bad driver I was. How I wasn't paying attention, how I was speeding. And of course I was speeding because I was trying to get away from the lunatic behind me. Anyway, you know, the point is, wow, what a seething cauldron of resentment I encountered on the highway yesterday. You know, somebody who felt it necessary to mansplain me about my bad driving, who felt it's so important that he actually stalked me and chased me down, you know. So my response was fear. That's a natural response. Like who knows if people have guns, you know? So my response was, first of all, it was fear. And then secondly, it was like anger, like WTF, what a lunatic, you know? And I called the police and everything to let them know what had happened. But then after I was going to teach a class, so after I taught my class, where I was sitting, and one of the things I like to say at the end of the class is close your eyes and just be present for a moment with the feelings in your body, and notice that, how positive the feelings are, I hope. And then if you think of somebody in your life who might be struggling and offer them some of the fruits of your practice, So I did that at the end. And as I was thinking about offering the fruits of my practice, this guy came in my mind, and I was like, I can be full of resentment for him. It was scary. It was dangerous. I was certainly in a place of hyped emotional arousal. But there was nothing I could do about it at that point. So what I did was send him some feelings of compassion. And I think that's what we can do for ourselves too, is when we notice we're in that place of resentment, we can shift it and bring feelings of compassion. So what Patanjali says is, when you are with somebody who's firmly established in ahimsa, right, then the other people are able to lose their hostile feelings. So fascinating to me, you're able to lose that hostility when you're with somebody now that doesn't mean that you turn into a doormat and let people do obnoxious things to you like that. It would have been perfectly valid and important if I had to come face to face with the guy to express my anger, rage, fear, and disappointment in his behavior. But the next step is to be, I'm sorry, whatever you're going through is that intense, that's the way that you have to behave. When people are doing things that are dangerous and scary, of course, we don't initially respond with compassion. We initially respond with the appropriate response to create safety. When safety is created, that's when compassion can arise, because it's only in the nervous system calming enough that safety being there, that we're able to go to this place of compassion. But in a culture where we're constantly confronted with violence, it makes sense to cultivate ahimsa within ourselves. It makes sense to cultivate that, because that is really what that attitude, that stance, and the capacity to access it as you need it, to mindfully access that kind of compassion. I also wrote gratitude in the notes with, that's very useful too, but I'm not grateful the guy hunted me down. I can eventually get to a place of compassion after safety is established. And I think that's a way we can think about ourselves too. When we go to those places of resentment, what is unsafe? What is feeling unsafe? How can we let go of that, the resentment, to create safety in order to get to the place of compassion? So I think it's important in thinking about it for yourself, but I also think it's important in understanding that our stance towards other people. So resentment towards the things that we've done, resentment towards other people. Guilt is important. Guilt is a useful motivating force, because it makes us, again, look deep into ourselves and say, what can I change? And I had to take some responsibility for yesterday, because I was going fast over that bridge. So how can I, make more time in my life, not be so rushed, not be so quick to, feel like I'm important and sorry, I'll cut you off on the highway. That's important for me to look at. It's not, there's certainly in that incident, there's certainly no sense of me not being able to take the responsible action as an adult and call the police, but it also, every little incident gives you an opportunity to look more deeply at yourself. So here's the Sanskrit from Patanjali. I wanted to pronounce it for you. Ahimsa pratishtayam tat vaira tyagaha. Ahimsa pratishtayam tat vaira tyagaha. That's the way you would chant it. So listen to those words. In Sanskrit, the sound and the signifier are merged. So there's something about that, chanting it, that helps it to go deep into your nervous system. So I hope this is useful for you today. I'm looking forward we got 2 more days, and then next 2 days, I'd really like to do kind of a wrap up, and also get your feedback for what you would like in the next 30 days. I'm thinking about doing 30 days on pranayama. But if there's other things you'd like me to include in those live streams, I'd be happy to. And I'll see you tomorrow. Namaste.